Welcome, 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 everybody. Thank you for coming to State of Summer 2023. My name is Sergio Antonio Garcia. My pronouns are he, him, and él. And I am the Director of Learning Systems for Big Thought. And your MC for this evening. So again, I appreciate you coming here today. So before I even get started into it, I do want to do some quick introductions on who you'll be seeing this evening. Our data gurus for tonight are going to be Greg McPherson. Yeah, data gurus. Greg McPherson, Chief of Big Thought Institute, and Dr. Annie Wright, Executive Director, Center on Research and Evaluation from Southern Methodist University, who will be doing our data portion and our storytelling today. We will have for our keynote conversation, CEO and President of Big Thought, Byron Sanders, and Dallas Independent School District. Yes. Dr. Stephanie Elizalde for our keynote conversation. So super excited to hear from them this evening. And then we'll be rounding out tonight with our fireside chat panelists. We'll have our youth leaders here, Angelica Barrera, Ania Hodges, and President of D-Custom, Paul Buckley. So super excited to hear about that conversation again tonight. So, as we move forward, first, I do want to say thank you to the Latino Culture Center, the Office of Arts and Culture, City of Dallas, for hosting us tonight. Also, I want to say thank you to our donors and contributors who continue to invest in our impact and collective work here today. And of course, to our Dallas City of Learning partners. Without your connection and collaboration, this work is impossible. And first and foremost, I also want to say thank you to the youth and families who are at the center of all of this work that we do. With this, we are building ecosystems. With this, we are really creating impact and moving that needle. So thank you all for your time and for your efforts for this event today. So a bit about our agenda tonight so you'll know what to expect, and I'll try to talk a little slower because I tend to talk fast. We will start out with our impact, we'll start out with our keynote conversation with Byron Sanders and Dr. Elizalde. Then we'll go into our impact story with our data gurus here tonight. Followed by that, we will do our 2023 Partner Awards recognition. Super excited to have those individuals here this night. And then we'll go on to our second portion of our data sharing out, which is Insights from Summer 2022. And then we'll close out this evening with a fireside chat and a call to action. So, without further ado, I want to welcome to the stage CEO and President Byron Sanders and DISD Superintendent Dr. Stephanie Elizalde for our keynote conversation. Let's give them a round of applause. We did it. They did it. Those steps.
Yes. Awesome. Please. There? Here. Anywhere you want to sit. All right. Thank you so much, Sergio. And thank you all so much for coming out on a Friday evening. We are so grateful that you are here. This is representative of, I love the rich tapestry of what has become the Dallas City of Learning ecosystem. And Dr. Elizalde, this is your first time with us as superintendent, Dallas ISD.
Thank you.
And the cool part is, this isn't her first time coming though. See, Dr. Elizalde was also chief of school leadership before. And before that, she was an executive director.
We're going to go all the way,
I was going to keep going.
Back. Okay.
I was going all the way back, and we go all the way back. When we first met, this was 2010, 2011?
2011.
2011. And she was the STEM executive director, STEM director for Dallas Independent School District. So she's the new superintendent, but she ain't new to the Dallas community. And we are so happy to have you here as a partner.
Thank you, Byron. And you're going to call me Stephanie. Okay.
Stephanie. I'm going to call her Stephanie. She keeps telling me to call her Stephanie. I'm going to do it. Okay. Stephanie.
Thank you.
You had a great statement when we were talking not too long ago. You said something pretty bold, and I think it's the headline for this conversation. You said every single kid at Dallas ISD has an extension of the school day, an extension of the school year. This gives them opportunity and experiences. Every kid gets the good stuff. Now that is a big visionary call to action. It's simple, it's clear, it's powerful. So I would love for you to talk with our audience here about why it's important to you. Why is that important to the district? Every kid gets the good stuff.
So thanks for that, Byron. And I have to say, the reason I want to keep telling everyone, call me Stephanie. My mother, watches board meetings. And so, I get called Dr. Elizalde. And at the end of the board meeting, parents are as parents are. She wants to give me feedback. So my 80-plus-year-old mother says, and please remember, your first name is not doctor. And that's her not-so-subtle way of reminding me that titles are not what she wanted me to think was ever important in life. And so I'm grateful I still have my parents, and I continue to take their feedback, even the part that I then begin to wonder whether, these are really the parents who raised me sometimes. But I also have to tell you that it's, I think, the second or third time I'm on this stage since I've returned for different events. And I'm really proud today that I wore the appropriate outfit to be sitting on this couch. Women in this room know what I'm talking about. Because I came here at one time and I had a skirt on, and I can assure you that I had to be doing yoga poses to make sure, and I was very uncomfortable the whole time. And I'm like, oh my God, So I'm off to a good start, even though the traffic was a little bit difficult. So, I think the good stuff, first and foremost, is that we think of public education in a very broad way of saying, public education, and I'm going to use those two words a lot this evening. Public education is supposed to be the leveling of the playing field. We're all supposed to get what we need when we go to public education. How many of you, I'd like to just see in the audience, how many of you got public ed in any way during your K-12? Now, don't put your arms down, hands down, look around. That's a majority of us. Okay, you can rest now. The reason I think that's important is we all got something out of public ed. And we want to make sure that that something is still available for everyone. So part of the learning, being a product of public ed, being through public ed, is that how do we define the good stuff, and are we really getting the good stuff to all the kids? And it is not possible when we recognize that inequities in our entire society have existed. You don't make an unfair system fair by making everything equal. I'm going to repeat that. You don't fix an unfair system by making everything equal. Because all you do is perpetuate unfairness. So when people have a hard time when we say we have to be equitable, which is, it's become a really nicely used word, and it's really hard work. Yeah. So getting the good stuff is about practicing equity. And I'm going to use the word practicing equity on purpose because we're not going to get it right. We're not ever going to make up for the centuries and decades of inequities, racism, that have been in existence. However, that shouldn't keep us from doing everything we can to get as close to equity as possible. And so part of that is when we begin to look at, and I know you've heard me say, we don't have achievement gaps in Dallas ISD. We have experiential and opportunity gaps. That's what we have. And so getting the good stuff, just like what do we do with our time, and I think that later on in a little bit we're going to talk about that. It's not just time. It's even, how many of you are parents out there? I'm doing my surveys around here. Okay, all right. Some of us work really long hours. We can still be really good parents because it's what do we do with the time that we have with our kids, right? The same is true with getting kids the good stuff. The reason that's so important is it's not just, well, let's just extend the school day or let's just have summer school. It's not more of the same. Yeah. It's about filling in the gaps. And those gaps are not caused because the children can't or don't have the ability. It's back to experiential and opportunities. And that's part of why I think after school, anything, I don't even like the term after school, right? That's why we started using the out of school time, right. Is really the key to beginning to ensure that when we say public ed is the leveling of the playing field, that's really what it is.
Beautiful, beautiful. So at Big Thought, we have this way of talking about a 21st century ready young person. We call that the creator archetype. It's essentially, just plainly put, the skills that a young person needs in a world that's changing so fast that we can't predict the jobs, careers, or what the world is going to look like in 5 and 10 years. You and I, we've talked about this, right? How the out-of-school time experiences, non-traditional learning spaces, it's a perfect way for you to start to build those kinds of skills alongside our traditional schooling systems and our K-12 systems. You actually have a great story that you've told about yourself and how after-school and summer experiences didn't just help you with your academics, but it gave you some very specific skills, some critical skills that you actually use to this very day. Talk about that story a little bit.
Thanks for that reminder. So one other thing I wanted to say about leveling of the playing field, there are really only 2 ways still today in which we can improve our economic mobility. There's really only 2 ways to do that. Through marriage, and there's only one Prince Harry, or through education. So which one of those do we have control over? The educational side. So it's in the career and the college preparation that we actually can ensure that all of our kiddos get economic mobility, which ultimately helps every single member of our community. So my own story is, my mother worked an extra job, but she wasn't working an extra job to keep the lights on. So I'm not gonna pretend that I know all of the struggles that our kids have gone through, because there's a very big difference between your mom working an extra job so you can take ballet lessons versus working the extra job to keep food on the table. But those ballet classes, my sister's equestrian lessons, I wouldn't have even known what equestrian was. Because it's about living out the vocabulary, not about memorizing the vocabulary.
That's good.
It's conceptualizing it, living it. So, ballet, who would have known? And I really think she did that because she didn't know what to do with me at home. So it's like, okay, where else can I put her? No, truthfully, my mom was secretary, civil service, didn't have a college degree, but she saw what her bosses did with their kids. And she said, if it's good enough for them, it must be good enough for my kid. So if they're reading to their kids, I should be reading to my kids. If they're putting them in these extra things, then I should be putting my kids in extra things. So, my sister and I took piano. My sister stayed playing piano. I said, no, thank you. But I had the opportunity to touch a piano and to know what keys felt like. Again, it's about living out the vocabulary. Who would have known that ballet is allowing me, as I'm sitting here right now, well, first of all, it probably let me be able to sit in a way in which I could, manage. But who would know that using peripheral vision, because you're looking at spacing on a stage when you're performing, is something that I'm constantly using to see, am I reading the audience? Is there something going on over here that I should pay attention to? Am I holding my head up properly? Am I making eye contact? If I hadn't had that training, I don't think I would have been a very good teacher. Now, everyone's going to get those kinds of trainings in different ways, but ultimately, those of us that are teachers, And by the way, all of us are teachers. Because someone's learning from what we do and say, especially our kiddos, every second that they're around us. But that being said, I love teaching. Was my favorite job in the entire world. Absolutely my favorite. And I tell everyone, I was a teacher by choice and an administrator out of economic necessity. That's why I left the classroom. I didn't leave the classroom because I really wanted to be an administrator. I left the classroom because I couldn't see myself making $500 a year more over the next 30 years. So given that, I recognize what roles like and how that affects teachers, but the whole idea of being able to have studied ballet and flamenco, not only did it allow me some skill set, it also taught me back to experiences. You know, someone would say Tchaikovsky, well, we were dancing to that. So I was learning composers at the same time that I was learning classical ballet. I was able to know who's Baryshnikov because my dance teacher would let us study certain dancers. So those are the opportunities or experiential gaps that our kids have that connect us to our academic world. So the academic world becomes easier. And let me rephrase that. It doesn't become easier. Our kids get better at doing hard.
That's good. That's good. I have a similar life experience too. Like I was coming down from having spoke about something somewhere on somebody's stage, and the guy asked me, he said, you know, where'd you get good at that? Did you do Toastmasters or something? I was like, actually, it was Selmore Haynes in St. John's Missionary Baptist Church when I was 9 years old in theater because my mom had to go to work and she needed somewhere to place me, you know? And it was free, but that was a skill that I have leveraged for the rest of my life. And you think about all of the different ways and places and spaces where people build that, whether it's ballet or theater or football or Odyssey of the Mind, now Destination Imagination. Anybody throw back Odyssey of the Mind people here? That's what I'm talking about. Let's go. Those are the special things that allow us to build these real skills that carry us for the rest of our lives. So we've talked about, and actually you all will see how Dallas City of Learning in a 3-year study by the SMU Center on Research and Evaluation showed the ecosystem, the way that we all collectively work together, so many hundreds of partners, that ecosystem can play a powerful role in stunting the summer slide. Here's what the summer slide is. Young people who grow up in communities where resources are scarce oftentimes regress 3 months over the summer. So it's not that they just stop learning, they actually lose 3 months of learning over the summer. So it's almost as if they only went to school 6 months instead of 9. Compound that for 13 years, it's a big contributor to the opportunity gap, right? We now have evidence that youth who participated in these experiences over the pandemic performed better on their standardized tests and had higher GPAs. You're going to see some of that than youth who didn't receive that programming in the ecosystem. So again, academics aren't the only point for out of school time, but what role do you think extended learning and summer plays in making gains to fight learning loss that we are experiencing all over the country, all over the world since the pandemic?
So I think one of the analogies that comes to mind when we talk about this is physical health. Because the more you're physically fit, if you endure a physical trauma, what do we know about those individuals? They recover faster, right? And so why do athletes recover so fast? Because they get great care and all that, but they're also in really good physical condition. So the role this plays is it continues to build, and we know that there are actually things happening in our kids' brains. And so it literally is about strengthening the critical thinking, which makes you able to rebound even if you have trauma, even if you have interrupted learning. It allows you to recover at a faster rate. So not only can it extend, it also allows you to rebound.
Wow, that's good. Powerful. So states across the country, kind of going with that theme, they're also realizing that the youth today have experienced a trauma unlike anything anybody alive has ever seen, right? But students truly have always needed its school systems and community supports to pay attention to their social, mental, and emotional well-being. What are your thoughts around leveraging these partnerships and the school systems for social and emotional well-being?
So I think the pandemic created obviously some terrible stories and huge loss for a lot of people. It also created opportunities for us to learn some things, and we should look at every single crisis as we pay respect to the loss it created. We also have a responsibility to learn from it, truly, so we don't allow those crises to just be in that moment, but what can it offer us? And so to your point, Byron, mental health has always been an issue. We just haven't always admitted that it is important. Yeah. We haven't. And we continue to act as if it's separate, frankly, from physical health, and it isn't. Right. It's not a subset. It's a both and, it's not an either or. It's a yes and. We've always known, you know who our best teachers were? I bet if I ask you to think about your best teachers connected with your emotional being while you were in their classroom. How many of you can think about a teacher that really you were going through something? Because I can. And so, but nobody was telling them that's what they needed to do. So part of our design in working with you and other partners, and I want to thank all the partners that work with us, the reason it's so important is that it can't be one-offs. Because a lot of us raised our hand that we went to public ed, but not all of us raised our hand right now when I said, can you think of a teacher who connected with your emotional health? And it's not because they didn't know how to, it's not that they didn't want to, it's that we had not provided that kind of support for teachers, for principals, for other support team members. And so this whole partnership is about ensuring, remember we started off, we want all kids to get the good stuff. I want every kid to get the good stuff, including access to mental, social, emotional support. How do we do that? We have to create systems. We work through our adults. We work through our team members to make that happen. So we have to meet the needs of our team so that they are able to meet the needs of our kiddos, of our scholars. So part of this is ensuring that we're increasing access, first and foremost. And I think we also have to change just the way in which we talk about mental health. Nobody blames anyone because they broke their arm and they need to go put a cast on it and it has to heal for 6 weeks. But if someone is expressing a need for mental support, there's still this kind of stigma, right? And so I think increasing access and changing the way in which we talk about it, I think you bringing that up right now is another step forward, huge, that all of us then can carry forward. The professional development that our team needs. They can't reach our kids if we don't give them the tools necessary to do that. We need to continue to increase our partnerships, not decrease, but increase. Because if we as school people think we can do this all by ourselves, then we really need to rethink our roles. There's also a role, I think, for even technology and innovation in mental health. Students right now in Dallas ISD can even do a self-report. Hey, I'm not feeling well. I'm not feeling like myself. And being able to have a way in which you could, connect with someone electronically so that then we can get you support, I think is something we need to continue. We're piloting that right now. We want to continue to expand that. And then at the end of the day, while we need partners and we need funding, we also know we have to prioritize clinicians and we have to be able to have a continuum of services. And I think in a minute, you'll hear a little bit from me. Actually, I'll just discuss it now. You start with like a basic, it's almost like what's a basic nutritional foundation? What's good food? So everybody should have good food, whether that's 3 meals a day. I should have a breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner. Well, our kids should be able to be greeted by 3 specific processes. Every kid should. And that would be, you first end up getting a warm greeting. That should be the first thing that should happen. And sometimes as an adult, as a teacher, I have to tell you, I hadn't received any training with this. I didn't realize how my mood affected my kids. And once I did, then I was like, oh my gosh. Because the last thing our teachers are trying to do, the last thing our team members are trying to do is to harm kids. They're trying to help. But if we don't recognize what needs they have, these could be those unintended consequences. Then we have to create a positive learning and working environment. And that means, I mean that in 2 ways. There has to be a positive and safe environment for our team members if there's to be one for our scholars. We can't have team members afraid. We can't utilize fear as a way of expecting great outcomes. It has to be about working together and creating that psychological safety for everyone. And which is really SEL or social emotional learning as we operate, not as a separate entity. Because none of us go around saying, hey, I'm going to interact with Byron on this content, and then I'm going to be nice to him later. It's together. It's both and. And so I think it's important to call it out, but I also think it's important that we have to continue to challenge ourselves to bring it together. Because otherwise, we do make ourselves susceptible to having kids in classrooms, and we lower our academic expectations of kids because we spend all our time talking about just the social emotional, and instead of helping them, we actually create additional gaps because we didn't provide them the opportunities. And then lastly, I'll say each class or each interaction should end with a warm closure. So I should be welcomed, I should have positive environment, and I should leave feeling like I learned something, I feel good about who I am, and I'm ready for the next task, the next day, the next class.
Love it. Love it. I hope y'all were writing that down. Had all of that. I'm going to combine these last couple of questions because
I talk too much?
No, because actually you hit on a number of the elements, and I think it's actually a really good segue. If anybody has spent a little bit of time with you, they've heard the word equity, just a smidge, right?
A little bit.
You've already talked about it today and how important it is. So I want to kind of, through the lens of equity, we know skills building is vital for a young person's readiness, right? Their today readiness and their future readiness. The reality is the world is changing so fast. There's studies that say anywhere between 65% to 80% of the jobs that will be available for today's third grader don't exist yet. It doesn't even have a name. It's changing that fast. So skills building really, really matters.
Sure does.
How do you see these education systems evolving to begin to embrace skills building in these emerging fields?
So I'm going to start by saying I've got this little mantra running through my head, truly, as I was preparing for today over the last couple of days. We have to prepare our scholars for their future, not our present.
That's good.
It's like, you know what, I'm trying, as we're thinking about, I'm like, well, our kids need, and I'm like, wait a minute. I'm thinking about my present. It's not about my present. It's about their future. That's a hard switch, but I think we have to start with that understanding in order to truly be able to then let go of some things, because here's what I'm going to tell you about the skills that our kids need. Some of the skills our kids need, which we don't know what all of them are, but we know that they're things like critical thinking, creativity. Those are all things that are very hard to measure. We like to measure things. We're going to have to let go of traditional measurement systems. We do. And it's hard to do, and it's hard for me too. And we have to model that. And so part of that, and I'm going to give a real example. I know the other day we were at a dinner, you and I, where artificial intelligence was, and I think you and I were kind of we were really sticking
We shook the table a little bit.
Yeah. So people were like, oh my God, they did not just say that. It's like, I don't know why they sat Byron and I next to each other. That's never, but. And so I think part of that is, I'm going to take a skill set that we have today that some of us, and I always think it's really important to first pick up the mirror and make sure it faces inward. It's very easy to point out what others should or shouldn't be doing. And our best course of action is usually to start with ourselves. So take, for instance, multiplication. Now, I don't know how many of y'all remember this, but I remember they used to line us up and they'd have a stopwatch back in the day when I was in school. There were dinosaurs next door too. But at that time, I'm glad someone thought it was funny. So, it's like, how fast could you do, right? 3 times 5, 4 times 4, At the end of the day, the reason some of us could do that real fast is because we could see patterns. And it hit me the other night as they were explaining what these super mega computers are doing with information is they're looking for patterns. So multiplication in terms of the memorization component is nothing more than patterning. Now the conceptual development of that is probably nice to understand, but once the calculator was invented, do I really need to be able to recite my multiplication tables in under 60 seconds? Is that a skill set that our kids need? But we have some folks like me that sometimes have a hard time with, I think it's really important. Why? Well, because if I had to do it, which is why I started with, we need to prepare our kids for whose future? Theirs, not our present, and definitely not our past. And so we've moved beyond even the calculator. We've got graphing calculators in our schools, in high school. And to this day, it's still hard for some of us. I'm not going to use that graphing calculator until the second semester. Why? And I'll tell you why it's important. Because that's time that we're making kids spend on something that they're not going to use, which means we could have been using that time to teach them something they do need.
Yeah, come on.
It is hard. Change is hard. All change, even good change, all change requires loss. So we need to be a safety net. Because my closing visual is, we've got technology and new skill sets and creativity. Because what we don't want is, we don't want technology to become the new content. But rather, we want our kids to understand the technology and to understand its use. Because along with technology positives, come a lot of AI concerns. How can our kiddos in their future address those challenges if we haven't given them opportunity to get there? So we need to accelerate that, not, I got to teach this and this and this before we get there. And once again, that is part of that out of school time where we can make things relevant and meaningful, not in isolation, which allows kids to be more engaged. And it's difficult. But at the end of the day, here's technology and AI. If you can kind of, in your mind's eye, picture a trapeze stand or platform. Picture 2 of them. And picture a trapeze bar that is swinging between the 2. And we're standing on this trapeze platform, and we're swinging. And we've got to get to that other trapeze platform. Here comes another bar. It's swinging. What do we have to do to get to the other side? We've got to grab the other trapeze bar, but in order to do so, you got to let go of the one you're holding on to. So we've got to be a safety net, because sometimes we're going to reach for it, and guess what might happen? We might fall. So let's have a safety net so that we can get up and we can try again. But let us not waver from getting to the other side.
Stephanie Elizalde, everybody. Dallas ISD Superintendent. Thank you so much for everything you're doing. Thank you for being a different kind of, new kind of leader and thinker in how we collectively work together toward preparing these young people with experiences and opportunity. Grateful to you. Let's go.
Let's thank Byron for all of his unwavering work and supporting all of the work that we do.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I'd like to have Greg, our data gurus, Greg and Dr. Annie Wright, come up. Her first name's not Doctor, it's just Annie. So our data gurus to take us into the next portion of this event.
Good evening, everyone. Glad to be here. So it's hard to believe it, but it's been 6 years that Big Thought and SMU Center on Research and Evaluation have been working together on the Dallas City of Learning project. And we're already gearing up for the 7th year.
So especially in complex projects like Dallas City of Learning, having a long-standing research and evaluation partnership that continues over time, it allows us to track and monitor projects like this ebb and flow. So there's no one study that is going to teach us everything that we want to know. So very much this is a cyclical investigation. We learn new things every time, and we come up with new questions as well.
So tonight, we want to do a quick recap, a tour of what we have established through previous summers, and then we want to turn to our latest findings. So we're going to cover what we know and some things that we still want to know. We're going to cover academics, but we're also going to look at access of programming, the quality of programming, and the dosage of programming, or how much kids are receiving. So we're going to wrap up this evening's address a little bit later on by kind of thinking about the health of our local out-of-school time ecosystem and where we can all continue to work together to open doors of opportunity and skill development for all of our youth.
So over time, we have been able to replicate locally what is known nationally. And this is that summer programs matter. They matter especially for academic outcomes, which we love to measure, right? So that's what our data will show us. But we've also been able to show that there is a meaningful threshold of about 30 days of programming where those impacts start to show up. And those 30 days can be stretched out over at least 2 summers. Importantly, and related to our shared commitment in this room to equity, we've also been able to see that summer programming matters most for students who need it most. And by this I mean students who start out the summer behind a little academically. When they participate in summer programming, they tend to improve more than their peers who started out more on track.
And previous summers have shown us emerging themes as well. For instance, in summer 2017, we saw that Dallas City of Learning was feasible. Programs were happening. Youth were engaged. Data was being collected, and that was happening at scale. And then we entered summer 2018, and we saw that it was replicable. We could do all of those things again.
In summer 2019, DCOL emerged as sustainable and impactful. So this was the first year that we were able to see some of those positive results on student outcomes. things like better attendance, GPA, and STAR. But this was also the summer where we started to see a little bit more activation of the ecosystem. This was both in terms of sheer size, right? So number of programs, number of students served, but also in students going to more consecutive summers. That's where we got to see this really fun finding, frankly, where students who attended more than one summer tended to do the best. They were getting more of the good stuff, it seems, and so that was really showing up in the data. We also saw in this summer, and related to the data sharing, we were finally able to make sense of things that were likely already happening. So of course students were going multiple summers in a row. Of course students were going to multiple programs in a single summer, but we had never had the data coming in to show us that that was happening. The last thing that happened that summer was some data infrastructure work. Those of you who know me at all know I say data infrastructure like 10 times a day, where the ELIS platform, the Expanded Learning Information System that we have developed in close collaboration with Dallas After School and now with Dallas ISD, where we really started getting that up and running. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later.
And then that brings us to summer 2020 and the pandemic, and that showed us a lot about ourselves individually and our city. We saw that the DCOL network was creative and continued to be committed to the youth in our community. Of course, programming looked very different in summer 2020. It was a very difficult time for our providers. We know our caregivers and youth were experiencing enormous stress.
But looking at 2021, a theme that emerges is that DCOL was resilient and is still relevant. We can now say that through the disruption of COVID, the local expanded learning ecosystem was able to sustain effective programming. The positive impacts that we first saw in 2019 are once again evident. So one way we look at outcomes is GPA, and specifically beginning of year. So looking at those first 9 weeks of school, the first data that we can see after students have just wrapped up their summer learning experience. And we see across the board, elementary, middle, and high school students, when they participate in summer programming, they tend to do better at the beginning of the year. Forgive us as we take a little tour through the traditional measurement. Of course, we all know well that no test can give us the full measure of a child. It will not tell us about the impact of a single program or the effectiveness of any one teacher, but these data are meaningful as we try to make sense of how the out-of-school time system can bridge and support K-12 goals. So a quick reminder, there were no STAR tests in spring 2020, so we're looking at spring 21 data. And a reminder that across the board, locally and nationally, student achievement scores declined during this time, especially in math. Learning loss is real. It is widespread. However, what we see is that students who participated in DCOL summer programming in summer of 2020 did better on STAR the following spring than their peers who did not. So the data here shows us the percent of students in each age group who scored at the approaches level on their STAR reading and math tests. You can see that elementary students in summer programs either held steady or did not decline as much as peers who were not in programs. And middle school students improved compared to non-DCOL peers. The high school trends mirror these middle school findings.
So this data supports what you're going to hear from others throughout this evening. The potential for out-of-school time programs to address learning loss cannot be understated.
We'll show you just a little bit more here about what we are learning and relearning about multiple summers of participation. So first, we'll look at the sample of youth who participated in programming just in summer of 2020. These data mirror what you saw on the last slide, but for these analyses, we used an approach called propensity score matching. That gives us a little bit more of an apples to apples comparison when we're looking at students who participated and those who did not. So for all grade levels, and for both STAR reading and math, DCOL students were more likely than their matched non-DCOL peers to pass these tests. And the odds of passing ranged from 1.9 to 2.2 times higher. This is so important to highlight. It means that the creative work that was done by many of you in this room during that now very infamous summer, it mattered. Figuring out Zoom passwords and figuring out 6-foot distances and whatever else we were doing. I think I was on calls with some of you during that exact time. And it's showing up. We really want to make sure that that's part of the story that gets told tonight. So just quickly looking at 2 summers, when we added the students who also participated in 2019, we saw generally the same findings. One exception just being for high school algebra, where the difference for students in programming was higher, but not statistically significant. And then when we look at 3 summers, we had a much smaller sample of youth, and the results really just showed up in the middle school reading. I'll use this as an opportunity to plug more data collection. The small data set that we had here for the 3 years is really just a reminder that even though the DCOL footprint is truly large in the city, being able to match your enrolled students attending your program to their Dallas ISD data requires a lot of diligence in rostering so that they can show up in the findings. All right, so these findings, they really do give us good clarity and confidence about the kinds of findings that we see over and over, locally and nationally, about the connection between summer programming and academic outcomes. They also invite questions. For example, what about these sustained outcomes, even during summers, where programming looked radically different for a short period of time? But I'll turn it over to Greg now to talk a little bit more about what happened in summer 22 and where things are going from there.
So Annie and I are going to return a little bit later tonight to share a bit more specifically about summer 2022. But we wanted to provide a little bit of a teaser about what's to come. So in short, last summer represented a shift for Dallas City of Learning back towards pre-pandemic times. We were able to turn the curve and rebound a bit. There were 66 organizations that provided over 1,300 programs that cumulatively served over 47,000 participants. When we look at student level enrollment, the reporting shows us that there were at least 22,600 unique participants served. Each of these are meaningful increases from the summer prior. We also saw that the method of program delivery continued to shift back to a majority in-person format. Of the 28% of programs that were virtual, only 29 of them were new for summer 22. The remaining were asynchronous programs that had been introduced in previous summers. And the attendance data for all participants totals at over 1.4 million hours, a tremendous increase year over year. This increase reflects the improved data collection that Annie was speaking to that can come when we return to in-person programming. When we look at the 23,000 or so unique students, we can see that while the average days of attendance for those youth declined, the hours of instruction increased. And this, again, I think it comes through that in-person dynamic. What we know is that we were returning to in-person, and so we had the ability to do longer program days, even if they were for shorter durations of time. There are further themes that are coming out through the data, and Annie and I look forward to rejoining you in just a few minutes to share more about what we're seeing.
Thank you, Greg and Annie, and thank you for taking us on that kind of data storytelling of the history of Dallas City of Learning, where we are now, what we continue to learn and continue to unpack. And so now I'd like to take this time to recognize some partners with our partner awards. And so our first recognition is for the Superintendent's Award. The Superintendent's Award this year is being awarded to the Writers Garrett. This award goes to the partner who continues to innovate learning practices in what is happening in school, to go what is happening in school and what is happening in their lives and in their communities. The Writers Garrett builds creative, empathetic, self-aware future citizens, equipped with a strong foundation in social and emotional awareness. These young creators use the literary and visual arts to build, explore, and proclaim their identity, illuminating their imaginations and honing their academic skills in the process. So I'd like to welcome to the stage first Dr. Elizalde to hand off the actual Superintendent's Award. And our friends from the Writers Garrett, Executive Director Aaron Glover, and Youth and Community Outreach Manager Sharon Mansfield. I should have had some music playing. This is where the soundtrack is supposed to be.
Thank you so much.
Such an honor to get it from you.
Look here. Turn it around, Aaron. Turn it around. There you go.
I don't know which direction things are going. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Elizalde, for presenting the award for us. And Aaron and Sharon, do you have anything to say or you'd like to say?
Yes, I do.
Come on over here.
All right. Just very quickly. First of all, I want to say thank you so much to Big Thought for the work that they do in terms of creating the Dallas City of Learning ecosystem. We've been a part of this program since the beginning, and we can really see and feel as Greg and Annie were talking through the themes of those years, looking back and going, yep, that's us too. And we are so thankful to be a part of this. One of the things that I was thinking about with this award, specifically what it is about how we interact with our partner organizations, the participants in our programs, and their parents. And I think that ecosystem idea really, really matters. So thank you so much to Big Thought. Thank you to Sergio. Also, Victoria, where are you? Are you over there? Where are you at? Victoria? Yes. Where are you at? Victoria is amazing. She handles the technical everything if you are a part of DCOL. And there she is. And she is incredible. Can we give her a hand, please? So, thank you all.
Thank you, Aaron. Our next recognition is the Neighborhood Award. The Neighborhood Award goes to the partner whose commitment to youth goes beyond their programming and that they provide. They consider the communities that they are in and or need to be in. And so this year's recipient is Junior Players. Woohoo! Come up on stage. As they come up on stage, I will say, Since 1955, Junior Players has provided innovative arts education for free to children and youth in North Texas and beyond. Through their programming, youth are transformed. Their camps and after-school programs are targeted to arts deserts, those areas that are underfunded and undeserved. They engage in children and youth through the arts, providing them with the tools that they need to navigate real-life challenges confidently and competently. Please welcome to the stage Executive Director Rosario Cruz and Program Director Anthony Pound of Junior Players for this year's Neighborhood recipient. I still thought over No, it's not. Would you all like to say anything at the podium? Sure. Come on.
Take it away.
Oh, that would be me.
First of all, thank you to Sergio and everyone at Big Thought, incredible partners. And, when I saw Neighborhood Award, I'm from a certain generation that some of you may be from. I like to say Generation PBS, Public Broadcasting Service. And good, I have fans in the audience. And I basically learned everything I knew in front of that Channel 10 in Memphis, Tennessee, from Sesame Street and Electric Company and Captain Kangaroo. But right, there we go. Mr. Green Jeans in the house. But honestly, when I saw Neighborhood Award, clearly my mind went directly to Fred Rogers. And the ideas and the concepts that I learned from watching Fred Rogers' Neighborhood and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood continue to permeate what we do at Junior Players every day. Things like, it's you I like because of who you are. And look for the people helping, those are the heroes. And won't you be my neighbor? Those type of things are what we lead with every day. We have a roster of incredible artists. They are the best in Dallas, but they know that nothing happens if they don't care first. And so we walk in the room, and all summer and all throughout the school year, that we can teach theater and we can teach painting and we can teach dance and we can teach graphic design, but what we're there to do, number one, is to care. Make sure we have self-care, care for each other as teachers, but most importantly, care for every kiddo that walks in that room. And if we don't teach a thing that day, they know that we're there because we care about them and who they are and who they'll become. And that's really what this award means to me, and it's all because of what I learned about being in the neighborhood. And so thank you for all of this, and we really, really appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. So finally, I'd like to cap this Partner Awards out with our Partner of the Year Award. This award goes to the partner whose own journey has grown in ways that supports this collective impact work that is Dallas City of Learning and the ecosystem. They have shown how grassroots organizations are key players in being change makers as they build their own capacity and continue to meet the needs of youth and community. So this year's recipient of the Partner of the Year Award is Let the Beat Build. With an emphasis on marginalized communities, Let the Beat Build exists to ensure that all youth and adults have access to mental health and personal development tools while blending innovative music technology for a therapeutic experience to improve their mental well-being. Let the Beat Build personally answered my call to both of our Dallas City of Learning Source Camps, to Summer Breeze, our collaboration with DISD, doing their own work as well. And so they really stepped up to the table. So please welcome Russell Lopez and Brian Allen of Let the Beat Build Foundation.
This is special. This is special for Brian and I because we were two music producers who care. All the effort that we put in to be acknowledged by Big Thought and Dallas City of Learning, it does mean a lot to be a part of the ecosystem and to get ready to do some things that no one's seen. That's what we're here for. I also want to give a big shout out to Big Thought and Sergio. A lot of you don't know this, but the door was closed on us so many times when we wanted to introduce something that didn't exist. And when we first met Sergio, I don't even think he knew what we did. But over time, we knew that working with him, he was the right partner. And the meeting Byron, meeting Vincent, Phoebe, Aaron, a slew of others that have just welcomed us and embraced us. It's really, it feels like home. And like I told Brian, and we agreed that anything Big Thought needs, Dallas City of Learning, or any of these partners, all you guys, we're here to answer the call. It doesn't matter what you have, what you don't have. We just want to make a difference and keep this thing rolling, use technology the way we know how to use it from a music perspective, and really just provide hope. I also want to thank our team. There's a lot of people that you guys don't see that work behind the scenes for us, and they really work diligently to make sure that we have what we need so youth and even adults get the experience that we want them to have. For us, being able to have all the organizations that are here welcome us and to have been able to work with some of you all, it's really been a privilege. And we're looking forward to the KICS conference to do some really great things this summer, spring, summer, fall, and so forth. So thank you. Our vision is to really make mental wellness a priority. And so we do that by using music technology to help introduce what we like to call flow, walking in between anxiety and boredom, locking them in so we can give them life skills, incorporating digital fluency, as well as design thinking tools and skills that they'll need in order to thrive. So all these things, I say all this to say that we are really grateful, appreciative, and we are now moving into schools. So we're excited to pilot our first school. With our music production and life skills programming, we really just want to help create a change, and like you both mentioned, really just get to the good stuff so we can see their futures in our present. So once again, thank you all. Appreciate it, every one of you.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you to all the partners. And I want to give all flowers to all the partners who continue to participate and collaborate in Dallas City of Learning and make the connections that are essential to make this thriving ecosystem. So now I'd like to toss it back to our data gurus, Annie and Greg, for the second part of our data portion. So, Greg and Annie.
All right, we're back. Hello again. Hello again to y'all. And congratulations again to each of our partners who were recognized this evening. So as we mentioned earlier, analysis of Summer 22 reveals a range of emerging themes. And so briefly, we want to speak to the components of a healthy ecosystem, a functioning ecosystem, and how DCOL reflects upon those elements. We want to take a little bit deeper look at access, dosage, and quality, but we want to do that through the lens of skill development. And finally, we want to close out by reflecting on the role that summer can and should be playing in combating not only summer learning loss, but in accelerating learning coming out of the pandemic and addressing the inequities and opportunity that we've been speaking to this evening.
So recent years have seen some additional work on both conceptualizing and studying local ecosystems, and especially expanded learning or out-of-school time ecosystems. And these really focus on both learning and development in all the places and all the ways that that can happen. As we've been spending some more time getting accustomed to those findings and those frameworks, we keep looking at each other saying, wait a second, all of those things are happening here. So we've got a couple of these key elements of what would be considered a successful learning ecosystem. And we want to talk a little bit about how they're each present in the Dallas City of Learning. This is through communities of practice, through partnerships, through programs, through people that all of these things start showing up. So first, coordinated ecosystems expand and improve access to opportunities. We keep hearing that tonight. They help ensure adequate dosage of the programming. So you got to get enough of the good stuff to start seeing some of these changes start happening. Second, they provide a platform to continuously improve program quality and indeed to build a consensus in the community about what quality even means. Third, when key partners in the ecosystem collaborate well, getting and using reliable information becomes easier. We see examples of this through Dallas ISD's recent formalization of a research consortium with SMU and with our launch of the ELLIS Expanded Learning Information 2.0 dashboard coming later this spring. Next, successful ecosystem-based collaborations like this one help promote new and ongoing partnerships. You are probably here tonight because you also believe that no one entity can do this alone. Last, the partnerships help scale the work and ensure saturation. This means both within specific communities that may need the opportunities most, but also more broadly across the whole city.
So we wanted to speak to one example, a recent example of this scaling and saturation idea, and it's through partnership. So over the past 6 months, in part through collaboration between Big Thought, Dallas After School, SMU Core, and Dallas ISD's Extended Learning Opportunities Office, we now have the opportunity to see sort of holistically what's going on in our community, both community-based summer and after-school programming and district-based summer and after-school programming. And having this fuller picture is going to help us inform decision-making, fill gaps, and continue to improve holistically. So the connection between summer programs and academic outcomes are well established, nationally, locally. We've spoken to that this evening. And this is a critical and meaningful link, and yet we know it's not the whole view of what really happens in the expanded learning time. There is no single story for summer. So as previously noted, the access and dosage indicators for this past summer were very positive, and they showed great year-over-year gains. But beyond these high-level findings, it's important that we start to look a little bit deeper at the types of skill development that's happening within the programs. We want to know what participation looks like across different types of skill building. And so following Summer 21, we made a decision to sort of overhaul how we were categorizing programs and instead start to align them to Big Thought's Creator Archetype framework, which Byron spoke to a little bit earlier here today. So if you can see in the chart, as we look at the programming that happened this past summer, what we start to see is that the highest percentage of programs, participants, and dosage aligns with the academics and artistry domain. It accounts for over half of the programs offered and reached nearly 3/4 of all of the participants. Interestingly, while only 12% of programs technically aligned with social and emotional foundations, those programs also reached nearly 3/4 of all participants, but only 20% of dosage. Conversely, programs aligning with digital fluency, design thinking, and civics and services reached much smaller percentages of youth, signifying that these programs are likely much smaller in scale as they're operating. And so what's the implication of this for the Dallas City of Learning system? It means that there's an opportunity and likely a need for us to continue to engage with more partners whose programs specialize in these areas of skill development and continue to grow the ecosystem.
So considering that academics and artistry is the largest footprint, we wanted to do a little bit deeper dive into these data. So here we can see that the category of academic remediation was the most frequent program type up there at the beginning, at the top. And this was followed by science and STEM. These programs largely represent summer-led district programming that was part of an overall learning loss and recovery approach. But you can also see that other more common types of programs were literacy and poetry, instrumental music, and theater experiences. So a little bit of a both and takeaway here. While academics and remediation have a large and quite necessary footprint in summer offerings, we also see a wide range of different types of programs also show up here.
And so we also know that there's a wide variety in the ages of students that are participating in the summer. DCOL participants range from the very young, under 5, all the way up to young adulthood. And so we did a heat map analysis to kind of look at the program offerings by each of these age bands. And it reiterates the same thing, that academics and artistry was not just most prevalent, but most prevalent across all age bands. Social emotional programming was one of the least prevalent across all ages, except for middle school. While design thinking had low overall percentages of youth participants, the spread of programming across age bands was fairly balanced. And then civics and service programming was most prevalent in those two highest or oldest age bands.
So each summer, partners are also surveyed to measure perceptions of quality and overall satisfaction. Quality scores are calculated based on answers to 5 survey questions. In 22, favorable responses remained high, and composite scores are higher than pre-pandemic scores. Satisfaction scores dipped slightly in 22, but they still remain high, 9.5 on a 10-point scale, and similarly remain higher than pre-pandemic scores. Just like access and dosage, these survey results around quality are also disaggregated by those creator archetype domains. And the 2 domains with the highest student satisfaction scores were digital fluency and design thinking.
So DCOL is an ecosystem that's ultimately fueled by relationships, whether that be the relationships between Big Thought and partners or the relationships you all have with the families and students that you serve. And we're now 2 years past that summer of 2020. And what's coming more into focus as we look at that satisfaction and quality data is that the programs in 2020 and 2021 were not of an absolute higher quality. That's not what was happening. In fact, we know that probably wasn't the case because we were all struggling to try to figure out, how do I make a program virtual? How do I make that engaging? Okay, now we're getting back into the classroom, but I've got to stay 6 feet apart. It was challenging. So what's really coming to light for us, what's coming into focus, is that these programs were needed. They were more meaningful to youth and families that were being served. If we recall that these summer programs were oftentimes the first opportunity that youth had to re-engage and re-implement with other people after periods of shutdown and isolation. And so what this brings home for us is that there's a simple power of just showing up as well, of being there for our youth and families when there is a need. And summer is still an underutilized resource, not just for addressing acute learning loss, but also in addressing more long-term and persistent inequities of opportunity. So every summer, we look at how many youth experience multiple programs and how many youth are experiencing multiple summers of programming. And I'm happy to say that in 2022, both of these areas showed strong improvement from 21. And it's encouraging to see that. But in both cases, it's still a relatively small number of youth, considering the overall scope of participants in Dallas City of Learning. And so in short, we have an opportunity to do even more. And so as the research from RAND and CORE has proven, summer can be effective in addressing summer learning loss, which in turn makes it an important tool in combating learning loss in general. And yet the potential benefits are more than just academics. They include exposure and development of critical life and work-ready skills that holistically help support our youth and their development.
Thank you. So Dallas County has over 650,000 youth under the age of 18. Our potential as an out-of-school time community is our collective expertise and our capacity. It is our willingness to value and to support all of the places where youth learn and develop.
So in closing, it's incumbent on each of us to serve to the fullest of our abilities and to make a part of that service helping youth connect to other opportunities. we must continue to work together to build and maintain a system of connection, relevance, and impact. We want to again thank each of you for your continued support of Dallas City of Learning, and more importantly, to your support of the youth that you are serving each and every day. It's through you that they have access to these rich and varied learning opportunities, and we're grateful for your contributions. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Greg and Annie, for those insights, not only from the past years, but from summer 2022. And so now comes my favorite part one of my favorite parts of the evening, which is our fireside chat. And so this is where we kind of take a little bit more interesting conversation and how the creator archetype and learning pathways is really coming to life in this particular conversation. So I'd like to welcome to the stage our fireside chat panelists. Please welcome Ania Hodges, Angelica Barrera, and President of D-Custom, Paul Buckley. So please welcome to the stage. Now I'm going to switch mics. Come over here, have a seat, and have a little conversation. So we've been hearing a lot about skills building and how that is manifesting not only in school, but also out of school. And so for our friends here on stage who participated in one of Big Thought's programming called Content Academy, where they explored these things with D-Custom and D-Magazine on creating a zine, we're gonna kind of unpack what the creator archetype means for them, what learning pathways means for them. So my first question is going to be to our young women. Well, first of all, let's have them introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about themselves. So let's start with you, Ania.
Hi, my name is Ania. I'm a recent graduate of UNT Dallas, and I'm currently a part of the community action team at Big Thought, and of course the D-Custom program.
Hi, my name is Angelica. I'm 18 years old, and I currently attend Dallas College.
Paul Buckley, I'm the president of D-Custom. We are a content and consulting firm owned by D-Magazine.
So thank you again for your time and your insights this evening. So let me get into it and I'll pose my first questions to you young ladies here. Coming from my own point of reference, when I was a young boy growing up on a small border town, there weren't a lot of opportunities for me to explore my interests and my passions. And so when I graduated high school, came to Dallas, there was so much out there for me to engage in, but I didn't know, one, how to access it, and two, where I can go with that access, how to kind of cultivate those skills and those opportunities. So my questions for you two young ladies is like, what has this experience meant to you? Was this something that you think you could have access to or knew about? And how did it open up other opportunities for you by being part of this D-Custom experience?
Oh, it's been amazing, to be honest. And to answer your first question, I had no idea that there was opportunities like that out there, especially, and the funny part is that during college, I would do social media for nonprofits. And so I did a lot of research on nonprofits in the Dallas area, but I never found one that did our age range. Like 18 to 25 is kind of like a weird niche age range, but it's really so important, especially in your professional development. So I loved, even before we went to D-Mag, we had like almost like a boot camp of like just learning like how to really work your resume. Even a lot of people didn't even have jobs before, but they learned they taught them how to use the skills that they had even without jobs and really how to market that. And so we learned so much. And I've been through college, so I've done the little professionalism game, but I learned a lot. And so even before we stepped through the door, they prepared us. So we felt so confident going in. And even then, I was still a little intimidated because, it's D-Magazine, but Paul and the team were so nice and so helpful. So I really had a great time with it.
Nice. Angelica, what about you? What was your experience?
Yeah, so I heard about Big Thought through my friend, and he was just telling me all of these amazing...
Oh, your mic?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So my friend was highly encouraging me to join the program. He would tell me about all of these amazing things he got to do. So I joined this past July. I joined the community action team. That's where I met Ania, and I heard about this amazing opportunity. And just with the support of D Custom and Big Thought themselves, I've learned so many things, so many skills. And like Ania said, we kind of like went through a resume boot camp, an interview boot camp, and through that, we actually both of us landed a job at Big Thought. So yay on that. But yeah, just
Yay!
but yeah, so just the experience that we've had alone has taught me so much.
And Paul, I actually want to get your insight in that question and like about this access to opportunities. Like, what did that mean for you as president of D Custom and maybe creating that and having it open and bringing these young people into an experience like this?
Yeah, it's been a real gift for us. I mean, we work with a lot of enterprise companies, and we go through a strategic planning process, and we use that to be the foundation for the Content Academy. And we usually do it on our own. We do all the research on our own. We collaborate with our clients. But in this situation, we let the apprentices do all of the work, and they just killed it. I've been impressed from the beginning, and it speaks to what Byron talks about in terms of youth agency and the power of creativity, and we're seeing it come to light in a really, really strong way. So it's been a real joy.
Thank you. And we'll get more into that a little bit later with some questions for you. So I want to kind of touch on this, again, this whole skills building and the creator archetype and how we were able to identify those skills. Like, when we hear the creator archetype, some of us are thinking, well, what does that really mean? What are the skills under the creator archetype? And so unpacking what that really means is, what are you bringing to the table, right? What are the skills and the opportunities that you are bringing with you to the table for an experience like D Custom? So my question is, like, what were some of the hidden skills, quote unquote, that you brought to the table that you didn't know that you needed to use, that you used in this experience?
Okay, I'll take it. Yeah, so I was definitely, something that I definitely like wanted to work on with myself is just talking and being able to communicate with people. And I learned that skill, which I didn't realize till later on, but my first job, it was at Shake Shack, and I was a cashier. And 16-year-old me, I was very quiet, very timid, but having to step out of my comfort zone and speak with these people and communicate with my coworkers and managers and bosses all on my own, that's something that I took away with me. And like I said, I didn't realize that until later on when I was like, oh, I'm a little more confident about myself. I'm able to speak more, and so that part as well. And then dancing. I went to Booker T, and my concentration was dance. So I've been dancing for 7 years, and when you have to be at the bar, otherwise you get points taken off, or you have to be there right when the teacher's there. You learn the time management skill that gets engraved in you, and just collaborating, whether we're working on choreography, that translated to me being able to work with apprentices and communicating our ideas, and just overall being able to talk and work with people. Definitely skills that I will continue to leverage and carry with me.
Nice. Anika?
Yeah, I think mine is pretty similar. I think a skill that I didn't know that I had or was leverageable was my community building. And I think I got that from being an RA in college, because I spent my first year of college during COVID. So I was just alone in a dorm room doing online classes. And it was the worst year of my life. And so afterwards, I hated that feeling. And once I got out next year and became an RA, I wanted people to be connected to each other. I wanted people to have the system or the support that I didn't have. And so I really enjoyed that job. I loved it. I always brag about how I got a 5-star rating at the end of it, 5 stars on me. And then, so now when I come into this new space and working with these people, I've really loved connecting with them and kind of connecting with each other and finding their skills and figuring out how do we use that in this project and how do all of us shine. And it's been amazing. They're so smart, so it's not hard.
Nice. So I kind of want to turn that question a little bit to you, Paul, in a different way about how it is an adult with youth coming in or young people coming in. What were some of the skills that hidden skills that you brought to the table to kind of make this opportunity come to life for them, that you were like, oh, I remember that. Now I can, that's what that helped me get through this opportunity.
Yeah, I think for us is it was really embracing their perspective. You can see how they show up. They're superstars, and having them kind of lead us through their thinking and how they look at the different assignments we were giving them, whether we're trying to figure out audience personas or purchase cycles or doing competitive reviews. They don't come with a lot of preconceived notions. They don't come with any baggage from being in the corporate world for a long time. I was just telling Byron we did a similar exercise with a big Fortune 100 tech company recently, and the people really struggled and they really had a hard time getting through it. Whereas working with this team to create the magazine, I think if we really learn to embrace their perspective and their creativity, turn over everything to them, let them do the work, then that's been the most successful.
Nice, thank you. And what I love hearing right now is how each of you are like bringing something different to the table. You know, we talk about learning pathways. We're talking about like where are our different learning experiences and opportunities, how they show up in our lives, how they show up in the passions and our interests, and then how can we transfer those skills to something that is more meaningful to us that will lead to a job at Big Thought or lead to an experience at D-Custom like this. This learning pathway and connecting them with the skills that we are bringing to the table. And I think that's what we also need to identify is like, we need to remember that we're always bringing something to the table in these experiences. And our partners here, our partners who we recognized, even DISD and all those educational institutions, they're allowing us to bring skills to the table, and we need to remember that. And they're not coming to us from a deficit, they're always coming to us from an aggregate. And I think if we have that aggregate mindset, we're going to continue to see that, that needle shift for the better. So I kind of want to dig a little bit deeper on this idea of the creator archetype with you, Paul, about your experience with these young individuals. How has that changed, as president of D-Custom, your way of thinking about hiring? And what are the skills that you might start to be looking at for employing?
Yeah, so we have a formal hiring process, and part of it is a psychological test. It's a version of the Myers-Briggs, so it's a personality test. And we try to say, okay, does this personality line up with the job that we're trying to fill? And I am moving away from it now because I think what the personality tests do is if you really are aware of someone else's personality and how they approach their work, then it'll make you more productive with them if you understand it, and you'll do better work with them. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're the absolute right person for the job. So I am a big proponent of stacking up skills, and that is what the creator archetype is about. And because of the economy and the way things are changing and the fact that we're moving into a knowledge economy now, you need to embrace these creator archetype skills because it sets people up for this change. It makes them comfortable with change. It makes them show up where they are thinking creatively and contextually about the assignment. They're not trying to apply specific things where they don't fit. So we haven't talked about this in a little bit, but I want to create some kind of a new test for hiring people, and I want to find out how good they are against the creator archetype.
Yeah, thank you for that. And maybe I want to say that same question to you two young youth leaders here. Like, what does the creator archetype mean for you, and how has it changed your way of thinking, and how do you might maybe live those skills and stacking of skills?
The thing I like about the creator archetype is that it's very holistic. Like, I recently interviewed Byron for the D Magazine project, and the part that got to me was the civics and service part of it, because I've seen a whole lot of professional tests and sorting, whatever, but they don't really talk about the outside, how you engage with others that can't do anything for you. You know, it might talk about how you engage with other coworkers, but it's never reaching out to the community. And I think that's one aspect of it that makes it really holistic. And it doesn't just make you a good worker, it makes you a good human being, or a really skilled, developed human being. And so when I started trying to apply those things to myself, it really gave me the freedom to not put myself in a box, but to engage in every aspect of myself. I think a lot of times, especially when you're, I'm fresh out of college, when you want to find a job, you kind of figure out, well, what's the one thing I can do? And how do I just, market that so I can finally get this job and whatever. But I think being with Big Thought in general and just learning from this career archetype, it allowed me to just embrace every facet of who I am because we're human beings, duh.
Yeah. Thank you. Wow. Angelica.
Yeah, so as like we were developing what the creative archetype was for the magazine, I really began to realize that it is something innovative. It is the future. It is what people in the workforce are going to be looking for. So I was in charge of the SEL, so that's what I'm working on right now. And it really is, I was interviewing Miss Leela Bell. She works for Big Thought, and just really seeing the work that's being done, it's really made for the future of the students, and that's what I love so much about Big Thought, is that they really do care about our future, not now, not the past, but our future, and that is what the amazing thing that the creative archetype is doing, and people like Paul are realizing that, and the workforce, and it is the future, and I'm so grateful for that.
Wow, she's passionate. Yeah. I love it. So, we're talking about these skills and how that might be living within the creator archetype and our learning pathways. And so it kind of got me to think about this gig economy that we've been in. In the gig economy, this term was introduced, I think, around 2009, and how now even, we have different jobs. And even myself, as an artist, I've got acting jobs here and there, and not too long ago I was even working for Whole Foods. And so what are the different types of jobs that we're doing to just sustain ourselves and live life? And do you feel, maybe this is a question for Paul as well, do you feel like that is, through this creator archetype lens, a sustainable way? Do you think we're moving away from it? Do you think the creator archetype will help help kind of expand on that? What are your thoughts on how this is all fitting in with the way we are living and working now?
Yeah, so if you learn to embrace a creator archetype, and people that really have a lot of different skills, they have a lot of different types of experience, they're going to show up in a stronger way and have a much greater contribution. So if you're in the gig economy, then that's kind of a required skill, in my opinion, because you're jumping in and out of different assignments and different work. It's very true for our company, where we're jumping in and out of different industries and clients and products and services. So we're constantly having to learn and understand things within a contextual landscape. So I think it's powerful for the gig economy, most definitely. It'll be interesting to see if that really shows up or not. Sometimes I always think about the gig economy as not necessarily you're a freelancer jumping around, but you have a little more flexibility in your own gig. And I would argue that creativity is not a 9 to 5, 40-hour-a-week thing. You got to give people time to really knock it out when they're feeling good and take a break when they're not. So that's what we're trying to embrace.
Thank you.
I will say that a lot of young people are kind of having the same realization as I am, that we are multifaceted human beings, and a lot of young people are going away from the idea of staying with a company for 50 years and then retiring. Mm-hmm. They want to pursue more things, or they believe their job is just one part of who they are, not their life. Mm-hmm. And so I'm one person who has multiple jobs, but it's because I just have multiple passions. I love working for DMAC, I love writing. I love working for Big Thought because I love community. I work for my church because I love church. And so it really gives me, the flexibility to pursue all my passions. But the other part of it, just to be realistically, they keep saying we're not in a recession yet, but every time I go to the grocery store, I feel like a recession. But, prices are really high, wages are really low. And so for a lot of young people, especially entry level, when you don't have 7 to 10 years in the industry to really negotiate or fight for more wages, sometimes one job just isn't enough. Mm-hmm. But the cool thing about the career archetype is that you can utilize all your talents to get other jobs to support yourself. So it's kind of less of a new lifestyle trend and more just young people adapting to the new economic world that they live in.
Yeah, thank you. I also want to say, and be mindful of your time, right? I think even though we live in a gig economy, we need to be mindful of our own health and wellness. And so make sure that you take the time for yourself. Yes. Angelica, did you have anything to add or like to add?
No, completely agree with Ania.
Perfect. So I want to kind of wrap up this fireside chat conversation with one big question in a way, and it really is around how we are connecting the out of school time, what we are, who we are here with the in school time, and what would your advice be to these educational institutions on how we can start to be more collaborative and connective with these out of school time partners who are also providing these skills building experiences and opportunities?
So okay. So I think really having a conversation between in school and after school or out of school time, research shows that when they do that correctly, that there's better performance. So I think just really making sure that they're involved in the students, whether there's a communication of like the students' behavior patterns, the academic abilities, their situation, really communicating with that, so there's a connection and better enhances the students' performance. Like having that conversation, I think is really important.
Ania, anything you'd like to add?
I think the cool thing about having school programs and out-of-school programs is that school programs capture the basics, your writing, your reading, your math, all of that. Out-of-school programs help kids pursue their passion and kind of like tinker a little bit. And so you get to see different sides of a student. And therefore, I think the one thing that would help would just be communication. Like, for example, if you have somebody who's in robotics class and he thrives and he's winning all the competitions, but his science and math grades in school are low, obviously there's a disconnect. And so if we speak to each other, what are you doing with him that's engaging him? What are you doing him that's inspiring him so much? And it puts those two together, and I think working together or just having more communication in between each other will make such a more holistic education.
Nice, thank you. I would say she would drop the mic, but then I don't want to have to pay for the mic afterwards. Paul, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, experiential learning is very powerful. So we've had a great experience, and it's opened our eyes to the possibilities. And perhaps there are more opportunities in school to allow students to contribute beyond the school, to contribute to the world, to contribute to the economy, and let them do work within school that people are going to see outside of school, I think could have a huge impact.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time. Thank you for this quick conversation, I know. I know there's a lot more that we could have gotten into, and so I really do appreciate you being here. So let's give a round of applause to our Fireside Chat panelists. Thank you so much. We can all go down this way. Oh, got a picture. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, now as we wrap up this evening, I want to have a call to action, and allow me to find my script in this before we move forward. So, part of the work that we do with Dallas City of Learning is really this. What, in my mind, it takes a village, and it really does take a village to really sustain these ecosystems, to make ecosystems healthy, to make them well, like we've been hearing this evening, not only from our data guru, but from the keynote conversation with Byron and Dr. Elizalde, and of course the conversation that we just heard. Like, what are the opportunities that we're continuing to provide, continuing to bring awareness to, so that we're building these skills and building futures? So part of our call to action will be framed around what we're calling a community of practice, which we'll all be participating in already. And so part of this community of practice will be kind of a long-term commitment and a long-term conversation. But with that, it comes with a commonality of language. So you've heard us talk a lot about creator archetype learning pathways, and so your participation in the community of practice is helping build this community, this commonality of language. And then we're also asking you to engage in the DCUL ecosystem year-round, whether that's through learning pathways and through digital badging. These are the ways that we are starting to identify skills through learning pathways and digital badging explicitly, and living on the Dallas City of Learning platform. So your continued engagement, moving beyond summer, moving beyond what is happening in that summer learning sphere, and a year-round holistic approach is how we are really starting to move that needle. And again, through our community of practice with a commonality of language, what this is all hoping to do, and what we've kind of heard a little bit about tonight, is really be advocates. and help change policy and or create policy for the work that we're doing. So if you are interested in being part of the community of practice, you know who to go to, this person right here. And we'll start to talk about what that might look like. We'll have about bi-monthly meetings where not only we come together on what we mean by creator archetype, what we mean by learning pathways and digital badging, but then helping us form and inform where our strategies need to move forward. So, as we wrap up, I do have some quick announcements. We want to show you some upcoming events, which is save the date for our big night on March 4th, 2023. That is next Saturday. So if you're interested in participating in that, we do have tickets available. It's our fundraising gala. And so big night is going to be next week on March 4th. We're also wanting to invite any what we call out of school time and informal educator to our KICS conference on May 18th and 19th. May 18th is virtual, May 19th is in person. And this is where we bring experts and leaders in the room of out of school time learning to you to kick off the summer, to really enhance the work that you're doing, bringing quality up another notch. As you learned from some of the data information that we heard, that the quality of programming is essential on how, but of course getting youth to show up and getting families to show up. So these are some of our upcoming events. So to close out, we just want to say thank you for coming this evening. Thank you for the opportunity, our panelists, our keynote speakers, you folks in the room for coming tonight to this State of Summer event. We look forward to seeing you next year, and we look forward to our upcoming events. Thank you, and have a good night.